I don't think that the conventional medical system wants couples to get pregnant naturally. But I think if we just take a step back and we look at big fertility, is what I like to call it. If we look at big fertility, no, it's no different than big pharma and big ag and big gov and all the other big organizations in the government in the world, right? This is, again, a multi-billion-dollar industry for profit. They want you to go through IVF. Women in their 30s are being told to freeze their eggs for various different reasons, right? Oftentimes it's career-oriented. However, they're not being told that just because you freeze your eggs, that it ensures that they will be viable. So you can go and spend $15,000 to $20,000 to have your eggs frozen multiple times and pay storage on them. But when you go to use those eggs, it's not a guarantee that they're good, healthy, viable eggs. A lot of the basics are honestly missing in the lab work that the Canadian providers are willing to do. Because they can cash pay here, we can get whatever we want. But there, we have a really hard time looking at inflammatory markers. We have a really hard time looking for deep-seated infections like Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, Lyme's disease. Those things providers are often not willing to run because they don't feel that it's justified. Most of the people that come to us have been on this journey for years, several, 4, 5, 6, 10. And for someone to say after that long, like, I feel validated. I knew all of this was going on. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't get anybody to order my labs for me. I couldn't get anybody to listen to me. Just really puts into perspective the system that couples are walking through while they're trying to conceive. It's really my own experience that led me here and allows me to really be able to understand and resonate with what our clients are walking through, because I've done that. I've walked this journey too. If you're trying to get pregnant and you have candles sitting on your bathroom counter, I highly recommend you open a trash bag and put those right into the garbage.
So before we get into everything, what do I need to know about you to understand why you do this work?
What do you need to understand about me to understand why I work in the world of infertility? And that's because of my own journey. My husband and I struggled to conceive for 4 years before we got pregnant with our first. And that really is what set the stage for the work that I do today. And looking back in hindsight, honestly, I'm thankful for that period of time, as difficult and as challenging as it was, because it set me up for where we are today. And if I wouldn't have walked through those 4 years, I certainly wouldn't be here having this conversation with you or any of my clients, or have, this platform to share on. So it's really my own experience that led me here and allows me to really be able to understand and resonate with what our clients are walking through, because I've been there. I've walked this journey too.
What is one thing you wish every woman understood about her body?
That your body was designed for this. Your body was designed for health. You deserve to feel good. You deserve to wake up and feel refreshed in the morning and eat nutritious food and have a schedule that's supportive to you, right? We aren't men. Our hormones don't cycle on a 24-hour period like a man's hormones do. We cycle on a 28 to 32 typically day cycle. We don't get a spike of testosterone every morning when we wake up. So the way in which we function in the world is entirely different than a way a man functions in the world. And unfortunately, modern society has been developed to function for a man's physiology and hormonal rhythms and not ours as females. So that's the biggest thing that I wish that women really understood about themselves, is the world wasn't designed for us. The modern world was not designed for us. So we need to take back control of that and organize and arrange your life to flow with your hormonal patterns through the month.
Can you name 3 things the average couple trying to conceive is doing right now that could actually be destroying their fertility?
Not sleeping enough, not eating enough, and that they're in too toxic of an environment. So they might feel like they're eating really healthy because they're skipping breakfast and eating processed protein, right? But we know when we're not eating enough, when we're in a fasted state, especially as women, that's extra stress on the body. So that's one. The second is not sleeping enough. Sleep is so vitally important. When you sleep is when your body heals. So if you're staying up too late, scrolling on your phone, trying to put the pieces together yourself and figure out why I'm not conceiving, that is adding extra stress, extra cortisol, dysrhythm to your body, in which your body can't heal in that state. And the third thing is the toxins that you're exposed to. So there's a lot of greenwashing out there. I think at this point, a lot of people are aware that we're trying to reduce environmental toxins, especially if we're trying to get pregnant. But there's a lot of greenwashing. There's still a lot of chemicals in the environment. And then there's also the toxicities of mold and infections and those sorts of things. So if you're living in an environment where there's mold in your shower, you could be doing everything else right, but that mold in your shower or the mold behind the drywall or in the basement or in the ceiling, that can have significant impacts on our ability to conceive, and it can have impacts on recurrent miscarriages as well.
And for anybody who's never heard the term greenwashing before, how would you explain what that term means?
Yeah, so greenwashing is when we're using packaging that looks natural and pretty, right? It might be cardboard, it might be brown and greens and look all earthy and lovely, but you flip over the packaging, read the ingredients, and it's still full of a lot of really toxic chemicals. They might be a little cleaner, but they're still toxic to the body. So greenwashing is when we're using packaging to kind of fool the consumer into believing that it's a cleaner product than it actually is.
Okay, what is a habit in a 30-something woman's week that most people would call healthy, but you would tell her to stop doing if she wants to get pregnant?
That would be skipping breakfast. It is vital within 90 minutes of waking up as a woman that we are getting between 30 and 40 grams of protein. If you are not eating breakfast and you're not getting protein, your body is going throughout the day in a fasted state. Women should not fast, especially at certain times of their cycle, especially after ovulation. But when you wake up and you're not hungry, that's a cortisol response. That is a stress response. That means you have too much cortisol in your body that is overriding your ability to rest and digest, right? And to wake up ready to fuel yourself. So women should not be fasting. Fasting's for the men.
What is a common thing most women have on their counter that they should throw away if they're trying to get pregnant?
If you're trying to get pregnant and you have candles sitting on your bathroom counter, I highly recommend you open a trash bag and put those right into the garbage. Outside of 100% pure beeswax candles, you are burning, you're lighting on fire fragrance, which we know is full of phthalates, that synthetic fragrance, right? And you're igniting that into the air, it's burning, it's becoming volatile, and you're breathing that in. And those are endocrine disruptors. So any of that synthetic fragrance, whether it's in a candle or body care products, it tricks your body into thinking there's more estrogen than what there really is. So it really is like lighting the match on a domino effect in your body to take out your hormones. And it can take a long time to reverse that. So if you've got candles that are not 100% beeswax, I would toss them.
And does that go for other things like lighting incenses and stuff as well?
Yeah, I would say so. So even essential oils, right? Essential oils are incredible medicine. I love essential oils, but they're concentrated, right? We're taking big quantities of fruits and herbs and other things, and we're concentrating them down into really minute substances. And they're very powerful. And essential oils have been around since biblical times. I love them as medicine, but when we're diffusing them into our air and we're breathing them all day long, right? That can have an impact on our hormones.
What is a product in nearly every woman's bathroom that could be silently tanking her hormones?
Probably her shampoo and conditioner. So these shampoos and conditioners, because we like our pretty hair, I'm no different than anybody else, is full of phthalates and synthetic fragrance and SLS and a laundry list of other things that we don't want coming into our bodies, because when those chemicals come into our bodies, we call them forever chemicals. That means they have a half-life of 40 years. That means in 40 years, half of that chemical burden that you took on today will still be in your body, and it's going to be in the cord blood of your baby. We know this. We have data to show that. But even furthermore, it's flipping the switch on estrogen. It's telling your body that you have a lot of estrogen in the system when you really don't. So it's setting off a abnormal hormone cascade that messes with the whole system, that's going to interfere with your cycles and ovulation. And really, it's just a dumpster fire.
Okay. So are there any ingredients that you would say somebody should look for in a shampoo, or where would you tell them to go if you're like, hey, throw out your shampoos? Where do they go from there?
Yeah. So at this point, if we're asking you not to use our chemical soup of shampoo and conditioner. What are we going to do instead, right? There are a lot of good apps that you can utilize. Think Dirty is a good app. The Environmental Working Group is a decent app. There are others as well. Yucca is one that you could use too, that are going to help you to find shampoo, conditioner, body care products, lotion, anything that you need, down to your makeup, right? That is free of some of these endocrine disruptors and these harsh chemicals that we're trying to avoid always, but when we're trying to conceive as well. And a note on that too is this isn't just important for the women. This is important for the men too, right? The cologne, the perfume, the aftershave, the deodorant, anything that they're using that is full of those overpowering synthetic fragrances is wrecking their hormones as well. It's hyper converting their testosterone to estrogen. So it's not good.
If a couple could change one thing in the next 30 days, what could give them the biggest fertility lift?
I would say working on sleep hygiene. Sleep is vital to healing. When you're sleeping, that is when your body is healing. So I really encourage our couples to go to bed at the same time every day, to get up at the same time every day, to get off your phone, no blue light scrolling for at least 2 hours before you go to bed. Don't sleep with your cell phone on your bed or on your nightstand. If you have to do that, always airplane mode. It's vitally important. Turn down the temperature below 67 degrees Fahrenheit. Put your hand out in front of you. If you can see it, there's too much light in the room. So these are all things that disturb our sleep. And so when we can eliminate those things that keep us up at night, we can focus on that good sleep. We can get into a deep sleep, and our body processes so many different things while we're sleeping. Our organ systems slow down, our heart rate decreases, our respiratory rate decreases, our memories solidify in our brain, the immune system turns on to fight infections and help to support us. Our hormones are regulated. The majority of what your body needs to do is done during the night while you're sleeping. So if you're not getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night, your body doesn't have the time to do the things it needs to do so that you can heal and move on and conceive.
What do doctors tell couples about their fertility that you think is just flat wrong?
I got one for you. Okay. That if your husband's semen analysis looks good, that he's golden and this is a female issue. When in reality, we know it takes two to tango, and there's so much more to male fertility than just looking at the semen analysis. And we also know that the World Health Organization established the markers for the reference range for a semen analysis, and they have very low expectations. They will tell you that your semen analysis looks good when you're only as good as the bottom 10% of the population. Now, I'm looking at 50 to 75% of the population, right? So they neglect male reproductive health drastically in the conventional fertility world. What do doctors tell couples about their fertility that is just flat wrong? There's nothing more I can do and you need IVF. That really just means that they stopped looking. They're not willing to investigate the root cause of why you're not conceiving. And the confines of the medical model, it's the next step in the algorithm is just to send you from your OB's office when you're not conceiving off to the fertility clinic because they have nothing left to offer you.
Why do you think IVF has become the default recommendation, and who does that actually serve?
Well, I can tell you it serves the multi-billion-dollar industry that is for profit. Why do I think it's turned out that way? I think it's turned out that way because the confines of conventional medicine is very much algorithmic. I've spoke to thousands of couples trying to conceive at this point, and it's always very much the same. Go to your OB. You haven't been trying a year. Try for a year, come back and see me. Okay, it's been a year, you're still not pregnant. What are we going to do next? You have long cycles? Okay, let's put you on metformin. Don't have long cycles? Let's go straight to Clomid or letrozole, depending on your situation. Sometimes that's combined with metformin. That doesn't work. All right, let's try a round of IUI. That doesn't work, which is not going to in most cases because the success rate is less than 10%. Then we send you off to the IVF clinic because that is the algorithm that they have to follow. And not necessarily even fault of their own, but they're not taught to investigate these other things that we're looking at in the naturopathic world. They're not investigating nutrition and sleep and stress levels in cortisol. And they're even really looking at hormones, let alone looking at them on the right days of the cycle. So it's really just a for-profit business, which we all got to make money, right? I get that. But it's a for-profit business preying on women and couples in the most vulnerable time of their life when they want nothing more than a baby. And it's the easy solution. It's the fast solution. And people listening to this that have been through IVF are going to think IVF is not easy. No, going through IVF is not easy, right? But maybe it's easier than doing a year of work that you need to do to get healthy enough to be able to move forward and conceive on your own. And everyone picks their heart different, but it's the default because it's the only options they have to offer.
What would you say to the OB who told a patient there's nothing else she can do besides IVF?
You're lazy. You're not looking hard enough. You don't care. When that is given as the only alternative in 99% of cases, I find that they just stopped looking, or they don't know where to look. They don't know what labs to run. They don't know how to evaluate for mold toxicity or parasites. They don't know how to interpret a Dutch hormone test, so they're not going to run it, and it's probably not covered by someone's insurance. They don't know how to counsel someone on nutrition and diet and lifestyle because they weren't taught that in their medical education. And so if they're not putting the time into learning these things outside of practice, they don't have the skills that they need to dive deep enough with these clients or patients and get to the real root cause, the real bottom of why they're not conceiving. And that's what's significantly missing in the conventional fertility world.
You've had Canadian clients in the past who will actually just go down to the United States to get their labs done.
Yeah.
Why is that? And why do you think they choose that path?
My Canadian clients oftentimes will drive down to the United States to get their labs done because the Canadian healthcare system is almost impossible to move through at a rate in which would be satisfying to anyone. It's a very pokey, slow system. And there's so much regulation on what labs can be run and what labs can't be run. If you are in the US and you think it's bad here, it's nothing compared to Canada. It's nearly impossible for them to get a lot of these more diagnostic labs or the labs that allow us to look deeper into things. And when we do get that data, it's not always reported in a way that's really all that useful. So many of them will opt to drive a few hours, cross the border, cash pay for their labs. We get better data faster. The other thing for those in Canada is you can't just cash pay for whatever you want in Canada. In the United States, you can cash pay for just about anything that you want to. They don't have that luxury. So they have to have typically an MD or a DO sign off. So if someone wants to repeat an HSG and it hasn't been a year, it's not happening. They're going to have to drive to the States to get that done. And I do see that happen often as well.
Are there any specific labs or any specific things that you look for in lab work that you know or you have experience you've seen like Canadian couples just can't get? Like whether it's like looking at certain hormones or like what is often missing in those Canadian labs?
A lot of the basics are honestly missing in the lab work that the Canadian providers are willing to do. So again, because they can cash pay here, we can get whatever we want. But there, we have a really hard time looking at inflammatory markers. We have a really hard time looking for deep-seated infections like Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, Lyme's disease. Those things are providers are often not willing to run because they don't feel that it's justified. We can usually get a vitamin D and a B12 once a year. ANA if we're lucky, but it's my basic functional panel that very rarely is a Canadian provider going to be willing to order the entire functional panel that we start with when we start our evaluation of client.
What are women in their 30s not being told about egg freezing?
Women in their 30s are being told to freeze their eggs for various different reasons, right? Oftentimes it's career oriented. However, they're not being told that just because you freeze your eggs, that it ensures that they will be viable. So you can go and spend $15,000 to $20,000 to have your eggs frozen multiple times and pay storage on them. But when you go to use those eggs, it's not a guarantee that they're good, healthy, viable eggs. And what's also interesting to note, because this also is the same in women going through IVF, not freezing their eggs, is that they're not given any wisdom on how to improve their egg quality. So I would never freeze my eggs because that is on the other side of my moral stance. However, if I were going to freeze my eggs, it seems that it would be logical to me that we would spend 3 to 6 months improving egg quality by diet, lifestyle changes, removing environmental toxins, certain supplements that we use to improve egg quality that are based on research. It seems logical that we would want to do those things for 3 to 6 months before we spend $15,000 to $20,000 to freeze our eggs. But that part is completely missing because, again, this is a multi-billion-dollar for-profit industry preying on people that are vulnerable.
So, if IVF has such high success rates, why are so many couples still not getting pregnant after multiple rounds?
Well, the truth is that IVF success rates are not high, especially over 35 years old. Over 35, the success rates of IVF drop drastically, and you can go to the CDC's website and you can look up the clinic that you are working with to see what their success rates are. Now, the really important thing to know about the IVF success rates is that they're not reported until someone has had 6 embryo transfers. So that's not even 6 rounds of IVF. That's 6 embryo transfers. So if your round of IVF doesn't get to a transfer, then it doesn't count as a failure. Most couples don't make it to 6 rounds because it's expensive, it's painful, emotionally, physically, all the things. So the data in terms of success rates for the IVF clinics is very manipulated.
Do you think that there is a type of patient the conventional system genuinely helps?
The conventional medical model helps people that are in acute crisis. If you're not in an acute crisis, it's not the model that I would encourage someone to embark on for their health. So if you have a broken bone or you're in a car accident, don't come knock on my door. I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to reset your bone. That's not what I do. We need the conventional medical model in an acute situation. But when we're dealing with something that's more chronic, we need a more holistic naturopathic perspective that's going to view the body as a whole, that's going to see all of the different organ systems together, that's going to look at you and look at your childhood and what you eat and how you sleep and what your stress is like and your relationships and all of the things that encompass who you are, because it's all intertwined. Even your organ systems are intertwined and they're all talking to each other. So simply, if it's an acute situation, often the conventional medical model is great. If it's a chronic situation, you're not going to get what you're looking for.
Do you think the medical system actually wants couples to get pregnant naturally? Or is there a financial incentive to keep them dependent?
I don't think that the conventional medical system wants couples to get pregnant naturally. Again, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And yes, that's a generalization, right? There are some really good OBs. There are some really good doctors that truly care about their patients and have special training and are doing everything they can to support their patients in conception. But I think if we just take a step back and we look at big fertility, is what I like to call it. If we look at big fertility, no, it's no different than big pharma and big ag and big gov and all the other big organizations in the government in the world, right? This is, again, a multi-billion-dollar industry for profit. They want you to go through IVF. This is why they put every woman who is now in her 30s and 40s on birth control for 10 years when she was 15 years old, to put her back into menopause or to put her back into puberty or a menopausal state, suppress those hormones shortly after puberty starts, and then tell her you can take birth control right up until you conceive. Well, she's never really even gone through a full puberty because they suppressed her hormones with birth control and set the stage for a whole population of women in their 30s and early 40s that need IVF to be able to conceive.
Wow. So many things I wish I'd learned 15 years ago.
All of us.
What does the term unexplained fertility actually mean? And why does that diagnosis frustrate you?
Unexplained infertility is honestly just a lazy diagnosis. And it's another way of a provider saying, like, I'm done. I don't know where else to look. Go see somebody else, right? Because infertility is never unexplained. God created our bodies to procreate, to have babies, to birth them, right? That is what a woman's body was built for. And this is really hard if you're walking through infertility, because I know I've been there. It can feel like God is failing me, or I'm failing my husband because my body is not, doing what God designed for it to do. But the point here that I'm trying to make is that your body can do this. Something is just missing. There's an infection. There's a toxicity. There's an emotional toxicity. Maybe you experienced childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, mother-daughter issues in relationships. All of those things are held in the reproductive organs. And we're just talking about the female side right now, right? There's a whole nother side for male infertility that is entirely overlooked by the conventional medical model. When a male has a semen analysis and is told your semen analysis looks good, and they have very low standards, that's it. They're done. And it takes two to tango. The male is 50% of the equation. The male's sperm quality and health is the second most common cause for miscarriages. The male and his health has a lot to do with placental health and how mom feels in early pregnancy. So dad has so much more to do with fertility than the conventional model gives him credit for. So oftentimes couples come to us and the husband has never had he's literally never had anything but a semen analysis. He's never had labs. He's never had a workup. No one's ever asked him how he feels emotionally, physically. We find varicoceles in so many of our male clients, and that's kind of like a hemorrhoid in the testicle, but it can damage sperm. So when we're in a situation where someone has been diagnosed with unexplained infertility, to me, it's just like, I got you, girl. You're just not being heard. No one's listening to what you're saying. No one's willing to dig deep enough, but you're in the right place, and we're going to do that today. We start today.
What labs is almost nobody running that you run on every single client?
Most docs in the infertility world are not running a fasting insulin on male or female, and we're doing that instantly in our initial workup. Fasting insulin is the earliest indicator typically that metabolism and blood sugar regulation is starting to teeter off. Now, the reference range for insulin is quite large conventionally, but anything over a fasting insulin of 5 in our book is too high. And insulin has a direct impact on the ovaries and the ovaries' production of androgens or testosterones. And then that signals back to the brain. And now we start to have too many signals of LH, which is luteinizing hormone that makes us ovulate. So now we're having multiple LH surges in a cycle, all because this insulin's a little bit too high. And now we're having long cycles and we're not ovulating. And it really is just the beginning of a domino cascade of hormones that are off balance and infertility. And so many providers are overlooking that. They're not checking fasting insulin. And when they are, they're using the conventional reference range, which the conventional reference ranges are established based on middle-aged white men all across the board of medicine. So if you are not a middle-aged white man, the conventional reference ranges do not apply to you. So we have to critically think through the reference ranges that we're using with our clients and say, okay, that's not accurate. Even though the reference range is, I don't know what it is, let's say 16 to 30, it might be something like that. We need to be a fasting insulin under 5 for optimal ovarian health.
And is there anything in particular that a person could do to improve their fasting insulin numbers?
The beauty of fasting insulin when it is elevated is it's reversible. You can make lifestyle changes to reverse fasting insulin. So one of the first things that we have our clients do is just start moving. I want you moving 30 minutes every single day. So you can break it up into 10-minute chunks. So walk for 10 minutes, even if you're walking circles around your house, right? Walk for 10 minutes after meals. That is going to help your insulin and your blood sugar to regulate nicely and balance with each other. There's a lot of research that shows strength training can be beautiful for people with elevated fasting insulin. Now, caveat there is like, you want to be careful. I don't really love HIIT training for women trying to conceive. That's, a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But strength training is great. Put clothes on your carbs. So when you're eating carbs, pair that with proteins and fat. Again, stabilizing that regulation. Don't start out your day drinking a cup of coffee on an empty stomach and eating a bagel. That's like carbs and a stimulant together, right? With nothing to balance that. That's going to skyrocket your insulin. And then you're going to crash 2 hours later and be like, oh, I can't get up from my desk and move on with my day. I'm so tired. I need to go take a nap. So the beauty of identifying elevated fasting insulin in the early stages is that we can reverse that if you're willing to put in a little bit of work. And myo-inositol is another favorite. A combination of myo and D-chiro-inositol is also very good for ovarian health and helping to regulate fasting insulin levels as well.
Can you remember something that an OB had said to one of your clients that really pissed you off?
Your AMH is low. You're never going to get pregnant without IVF in an egg donor. And I have seen this scenario time and time and time again, that women are told your chances of conception are 0, get an egg donor. And It's just simply not true. I have a laundry list of clients that we've supported with very, very low AMH levels that conceive naturally. So the data shows us that low AMH levels, so anti-Müllerian hormone, correlate with poor outcomes with IVF, but not natural conception. And you did hear me say that right, as counterproductive as it sounds. When your AMH is low, they tell you to move forward with IVF with an egg donor most of the time. But the research shows that is correlated with a poor outcome. Right. So, yeah. So essentially it's an oxymoron. They're telling you to do something they know is not going to work based on your AMH levels. But again, it has no impact on natural conception. So in my clinic and with my clients, I actually don't run AMH because I find that it just causes women more stress than it's worth. And we know even with an AMH level below zero point 0 number, zero point 0x, we still have conception occur naturally.
Okay. Walk me through what you actually look at when a couple first comes to meet you. What are you trying to understand?
What we're trying to understand is the root cause. And I'm actually starting to hate the term root cause because it's just so generally thrown around in the world of functional medicine. But what I want to know is, why are we not conceiving? And deeper than that, let's say someone comes in with endometriosis. Why do you have endometriosis? Let's say someone comes in with anovulation, so they're not ovulating. Why are you not ovulating? We have to answer the question of why. All of these diagnoses are really just symptoms of something deeper going on in the body. So the things that we're looking at when we start with someone is a laundry list of labs. We want to see all the things head to toe. I want to know, do you have infections? Are you detoxing properly? Do you have autoimmune conditions? We're doing a really deep dive into labs, hormones, all the things, right? We're doing food intolerance evaluation. I want to know, are the foods that you eating fuel for your body? Are they causing you to live in a systemic inflammatory state that's not going to allow an embryo to implant into your uterus? I want to know about your vaginal microbiome health, and doing a test that checks for 10 different infections is not sufficient. We're looking for 50,000 different infections in the vaginal canal within a month of starting with our clients, weeks really, of starting with our clients. We need to make sure that the vaginal canal and the uterus is not a hospitable environment for an embryo trying to implant. We're looking at a Dutch urine hormone analysis, which allows us the deepest dive that we can take in medicine to see how your body is making hormones, how it's metabolizing them or breaking them down out of the body, how they're influencing each other. We're looking at your cycle charts. We're teaching you how to actually chart your cycle in a proper way. And that's not just recording when you're bleeding and letting the app tell you when you're ovulating. That's not going to work, right? We need to know how to track our cervical fluid and when we're bleeding and this and that and the other thing, right? So we're going to teaching our clients how to track that data. And then we're using that data clinically and teaching our clients how to use that to know their bodies, because our period is the fifth vital sign. There's a book about that, right? But really it is. It's like our report card. It gives us so much information about what's happening in the body every month. So we have to go into the nitty gritty of the data, how you feel. What was your childhood like? What stressors do you have? What emotional traumas do you have? What are your relationships like? All of that matters with who you are today. And I find that a lot of the couples that we support, a lot of the women that we support are very type A, very structured, don't feel good enough because they're not conceiving, trying to prove themselves to their parents or X, Y, and Z, right? And I will often ask them, like, did you have stomach aches when you used to go to school? Like, do you remember that? Second grade, third grade, fourth grade, having tummy aches every time you went to school? And oftentimes they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, that's when your anxiety started. That's the manifestation of anxiety in a child. It's a stomach ache going to school, right? So that is where it started. So we got to go all the way back to there. But like, why did we have anxiety when we were going to school? We got to figure that out, right? Was it a bully at school? Was it pressure from a parent? Was it, it was hard. You didn't want to get called on to read. You were self-conscious. Like, what is the thing, right? And so often we find that our clients that are struggling to conceive, we can go back to something on the mental, emotional level to find where the true root cause is. And that is really what sets us apart. All of our diagnostics are great and I love them and we use them. But what really sets us apart in the work that we do is we're doing that work on the mental, emotional, spiritual level of getting to like who you are, what formed you, what traumas are you holding on to, and how do we let you heal? How do we help you heal from that and let go of those traumas so that your body feels safe to conceive?
What does a healthy cycle actually look like? And how many women do you think have one?
Healthy cycles are not as common as we think they are. Most women are told, like, cramps, heavy bleeding, like, that's just normal. It's just part of being a woman. It's just the card you drew, sister. No, it's not. It's not how it works, right? So a healthy cycle is anywhere from like 26 to 32 to 34 days, right? The thing that you don't want is you don't want to swing more than 8 days from cycle to cycle. So if you have a 24-day this cycle, you don't want to have, um, 24 plus 8, whatever that is. You don't want to have a cycle longer than that the next cycle, right? Your cycle should surprise you. This is what I always tell women. Your cycle should just show up. If you're not tracking, you should have no idea she's coming, right? That means you don't have cramps, you don't have headaches, you aren't moody, you're not having food cravings. That is how it's supposed to be. That is not how most women function. So I don't know, maybe like 10% of women have a cycle like that. You should not be bleeding clots bigger than the size of your pinky. You should not be soaking an overnight pad for, you shouldn't need 4 of those in a day. So I think that a lot of women have way heavier bleeding, far too many cramps, headaches, all of the things, and are just told it's normal, but it's really not normal.
Oh, I'm learning a lot.
I'm so glad.
What is the connection between chronic illness and fertility that conventional medicine often misses?
That chronic illness is the root cause of infertility. Of course, it goes a layer deeper to the mental emotional plane. But when we have chronic illness and the body is in a state of survival or inflammation systemically or fighting off infections, the body is not going to reproduce, right? We kind of have to think about this a little like animalistically. Does your body feel safe to conceive? Is it safe to bring life into the womb in the current state, right? Uh, that has to be addressed. And so this could be, do we have chronic illness? Are we overstressed? Do we work too many hours, right? Does a baby physically fit into your life? Is there enough space in the environment in which you live? And chronic illness is part of that, because if your immune system is so busy fighting off infections that you've had for 15 years or since you were 15 years old, then that's its priority. It's trying to survive. Keeping you alive comes first, fertility comes second. Another thing is that chronic illnesses have a direct impact on the reproductive system. So there's a lot of research that shows how parasitic infections, bacteria, viruses, mold toxicity have a direct impact on things like PCOS and endometriosis and adenomyosis and pelvic inflammatory disease and things, these pathologies in the female reproductive tract, also the male reproductive tract as well. So some of these chronic illnesses that are being overlooked are having a direct impact on the reproductive system and wreaking havoc.
Why do you require both the husband and the wife in your program?
Because it takes 2 to tango. You can't get pregnant on your own as a woman or a man, right? So why would we only look at half of the equation? It's just not even logical. So if husband and wife aren't willing to come in and do this together, they're just not a good fit for our program, and that's okay. But your husband's got to be on board with you. There's nothing more frustrating than making all these dietary changes, taking supplements, kind of flipping your life upside down, and your husband just watching on the sidelines like, I'm not willing to do that. Well, if he's not willing to do that, this is not going to work. It's just not. It's just black and white, right? And so he has to be all in with you. He has to not just be supportive of what you're doing, but willing to put the effort in on his half as well. And again, like it takes 2 to tango. He's 50% of the equation. He's 50% of the DNA that makes up your baby. He's 50% of that embryo. He's the second leading cause of recurrent miscarriages. He has an impact on the health of the placenta and how you feel in the first trimester of pregnancy. And so there's numerous reasons why we require him to be on board, but also from a spiritual aspect is children come from the unity, the sanctity of marriage, right? From that sacred bond between husband and wife. And so if we don't address conception from that aspect and supporting the bond in the marriage, and we all know how intimate life can struggle when you're walking through the journey of infertility, we have to support the whole package.
So, what would you say to the woman whose husband isn't on board with this?
Just pray. Keep praying for him. Pray for his heart to be softened. Pray that he will see the desires of your heart. Pray that he sees the suffering that you're going through and is willing to to do things maybe differently. And we know that based on research that women are the primary medical decision makers in a household. That doesn't mean that it's always easy, but we're the ones typically doing the research and staying up too late scrolling and listening to the podcast and so on and so forth and gathering the information. And sometimes our husbands aren't doing that, right? They're just kind of like along for the ride. And so I would encourage you to share that information in not like a nagging way, but a gentle way that's like, hey, I learned this new thing today. What do you think about this? I mean, kind of start there, right? I would encourage you to do things together, right? Try to do some exercise together. Try to change your meal structure together. Maybe start cooking together, things like that. And do some of these little things. And maybe he'll start to feel a little bit better and say like, oh, since we made these dietary changes, I am feeling a little bit better. And maybe there is something to be said about taking this approach. But truthfully, if your husband isn't on board, I know that can be so frustrating, but if he's not on board with taking more of a holistic approach, that's going to increase stress level for you. And again, that doesn't help when we're trying to conceive.
Okay. This one I'm actually very interested to hear. What happens in the woman's body when she's been on hormonal birth control for years? And why does that matter for conception?
Yeah. When a woman's been on hormonal birth control for years or oftentimes decades, what's happening is that hormonal birth control is synthetic. It's synthetic progesterone is synthetic estrogen. So your body still sees it as estrogen, right? And your brain is reading your blood all the time for hormone levels and all kinds of different things, right? So we've got this synthetic estrogen in the bloodstream now, and your brain is like seeing that as estrogen. And it's like, all right, we're doing good. Okay. But there is no signal from your brain going to your ovaries. There's no communication from your brain to your ovaries while you're on hormonal birth control to tell your body to function on its natural rhythms. A lot of women are like, oh, I had a period every month when I was on birth control. No, you didn't. It's not a real period. It's just a bleed from progesterone withdrawal. There's no communication from the brain to the ovaries telling your body to make that ovulation and then that period happen, right? So taking a very high level view, it's suppressing the hormones. It's putting you back into a state of, you could say, like pre-puberty or menopause. Nothing's happening in that communication between the brain and the ovaries. And the other thing that happens when we're on, especially oral contraception, is we're pulsing hormones every single day in like a sawtooth fashion. That is how a man's hormones look. A man has a spike of testosterone every morning, lucky him, when he wakes up, right? Our bodies don't function like that. We function on this little like smoother curve through a month. So we don't have a spike of estrogen every single day. But when you're on oral contraception, you do have a spike of synthetic estrogen every single day. So it's just like taking the hormonal system and just shaking it up, and it doesn't know what it's happening, right? So when we come off birth control, yeah, some women get lucky and their cycles resume and they move on all hunky-dory. But for a lot of women, that's not what happens. It can take years for the cycle to come back, and it can take years for the communication between the brain and the ovaries to turn back on so that we get ovulation again, get those normal cycles, and we can move forward and conceive.
So if a woman has been on hormonal birth control for a long time and she's now been off it for a while, is there a way that she would know if she's having a normal cycle and ovulating properly?
What I would recommend is blood work on certain days of your cycle. So there's certain labs that we look at on day 1, 2, or 3 of the cycle. So while you're bleeding, right? This is going to be your estrogen. This is going to be your testosterone, your DHEA, your LH, and your FSH. And then we need to look at other hormones 7 days after you ovulate. So 7 days after you ovulate is when we need to look at your progesterone levels. This is not day 21. This is 7 days after you ovulate. This is a very important piece. And we're going to see, do we have this progesterone rise, right? So that gives us some insight. I love a Dutch for a woman who's post birth control of any type, because that gives us such a deeper dive into how all of the hormones are being produced and metabolized, influencing each other. So I would say we start with blood work, right? And when you're off birth control, you're not going to have fake periods like you do on birth control. So if you're bleeding, you're bleeding. It's real, right? The brain is making that happen. But a common misconception, you do not have to ovulate to have a period. A lot of women are taught that if you're having a period, you're ovulating. That's not true. Your body can not ovulate and still have a period. So the only way to guarantee with 100% certainty that you've ovulated is an ultrasound post-ovulation to look for the corpus luteum, which is a little tissue left over in your ovary. after the egg is ovulated. So that's the only way to know with 100% certainty. Some people will argue, I see progesterone going up. I see my basal body temperature going up post ovulation. And yeah, like there's merit to that. But you could have a tumor that's hypersecreting progesterone. The only way to know with 100% certainty is to have that post ovulatory ultrasound.
Wow. My goodness. Mind blown. Okay. What does gut health have to do with getting pregnant?
Gut health has everything to do with getting pregnant. Gut health is where we always start. And there's several different ways we could talk about this. The first is if you're not pooping every day, you're reabsorbing your estrogen. So estrogen is excreted through a bowel movement. So there's dirty estrogens, we could say, in the gut ready to be excreted. And if you're not pooping, you're reabsorbing all that dirty estrogen back into the system. So now you're in a state of estrogen dominance, most likely because your estrogen levels are too high and out of balance with progesterone, right? Another way that we could correlate gut health with reproductive health is that the liver is part of gut health. The liver is your cleaner, essentially. It's cleaning up and detoxing all of the things out of your body. So if your liver is not functioning properly, you're not detoxing estrogen properly. Your estrogens are not being marked for detox the way in which they should. So then again, estrogens are building up in the body. We're getting things like migraines and heavy periods and cramps and acne. Those are 4 symptoms together that are a red flag that the liver is not functioning the way in which it should. So again, if we don't have that good gut health, then our hormones are going to get out of balance. The gut really regulates, especially the liver, the hormones more than anything else because it's regulating the detoxification of the hormones. And then there's a correlation between, of course, there's the gut reproductive axis, right? There's the gut brain axis. So the gut is talking to the brain and telling the brain how to function. And again, the brain is what sends the signals from ovulation and hormone production to the ovaries. So this is just a really good example of how all of these organ systems in the body are intertwined. And we can't just look at the reproductive system. We have to look at everything in combination.
You've said in your previous post, infertility isn't a mystery, it's a signal.
It's a red flag. That's your body holding up a red flag saying, help me out. I can't do this right now because I have infections or I'm in survival mode or I'm stressed out or, the laundry list of different things that it could be. So not always, but oftentimes fertility is a direct result of health. And that can be hard to hear. And that might make some people mad, and that's okay. But I encourage you to step back and really think about that. Outside of situations where like we have 2 blocked fallopian tubes. Okay, that makes it kind of impossible, right? The egg cannot get to the sperm and they cannot merge. So even when we have things like endometriosis, while we need to remove the lesions, we still need to figure out why they got there in the first place. And so no matter how you look at this, all of the signs and the symptoms that come with endometriosis are a signal that something else is going on. And we have to dig deeper to find the root cause of why these things are happening in the body.
What is a husband doing this week that his wife doesn't realize might be the reason they're not pregnant?
Smoking marijuana or using marijuana, drinking a couple beers after work every day, swinging into the fast food, putting his phone in the front pocket of his pants is radiating the testicles and heating them all day long. Wearing too tight of underwear, and one that's really hard and painful to hear about is porn and masturbation. And we know this with the utmost certainty because we survey the men in our program. And keep in mind, like this is a population of Christian men. And we know just throughout medicine, when people report, they underreport. So if somebody tells you they're drinking 3 drinks a day, they're having 4 or 5, then we have data to support that, right? And so the amount of men that report to us how many times a week they're watching porn, they're masturbating, is not only damaging the marital unit between husband and wife, but it's also having an influence on sperm quality and hormones and other things. And so I know that may be really hard and difficult to hear, right? But I think we just need to be realistic about the stronghold that this has on men, and especially in a dynamic of infertility when there is already so much strain on intimacy and intercourse between husband and wife. I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of walking through an infertility journey. And so then we enter into this state of self-seeking pleasure, right? And unrealistic pleasure. And so you know, if you're in this situation, I would just encourage you, send this post to your husband and let him know, like, he's not alone. There are resources, there are people that can support him so that he can not only live more in alignment with Christian beliefs, if you're a Christian, but also to re-sanctify your marriage as well.
Can a man actually improve his sperm quality in 90 days?
Men can improve their sperm quality in 60 to 90 days, as can we improve egg quality as women. It's gonna take some lifestyle changes, right? That's gonna require like a reduction of marijuana use and alcohol, um, better quality foods, not putting phones in the front pocket of our pants, right? That is radiating the testicles, that's heating them up. Heat is not good for the testicles. So we don't want to go in saunas, we don't want to go in hot tubs, we don't want to wear whitey tighties that are too tight. We need to let the testicles breathe. If you have a desk job or you're a truck driver, you're sitting all the time, you need to get up every hour and walk around and bring some blood flow to the testicles. So there's a lot of things we can do. We're not even touching on supplements, right? There's a ton of research on CoQ10 and ashwagandha and zinc and vitamin D. And so there's a laundry list of things that we can do to improve sperm health, yes, in 60 to 90 days.
What is one thing your Catholic faith makes you do differently in your practice that most doctors don't do?
There's a lot of things that we do differently than the conventional world based on our religious beliefs and our moral stance. Of course, we're never going to recommend IUI or IVF. I'm pretty clear about that. But another thing that we do differently is the way in which we recommend a semen analysis. So this is something that I didn't even know about when my husband and I were going through our own infertility journey, but there is a special way to do a semen analysis that is in alignment with the teaching of the Catholic Church. And so we call this a licit collection. To do a licit collection, you purchase a specific condom that's perforated, you collect that semen sample during intercourse, and then you empty it from the condom into the collection cup, and you can send that out to any lab that you're working with. We know that's going to decrease the results a little bit, but we take that into account when we're looking at the results from the semen analysis. So that is a pretty significant thing that we've changed in how we recommend that to be completed.
Why do you think so many of your clients say that healing felt different with you than with anyone else they'd seen?
Yeah. Because we actually listen to them. We validate them. We care about them. We know what they're up to. We know what they're doing this weekend. We want to know what they've been eating and how they've been moving their body. And we don't spend 15 minutes with them. We spend hours with our clients one-on-one in the first 2 weeks of working together. So we can get a serious understanding of what their health history is, what their emotional history is, what they've been walking through, what their testing has looked like, where we need to fill in the gaps. So we really are all in with our clients, and we're very accessible to them. Monday through Friday, there's multiple times through the day that you can get on a call with any of our experts. You can book office hours. So there's no getting your labs drawn and coming back to see me in 4 or 5 weeks to get your results, right? No, you're going to have them the next morning and we're going to talk about them. God opens the womb and not pharma. If we look at this scripturally or based on the medicine, if we go into a fertility clinic, say we're going for IVF, the man goes in one direction and the woman goes in the other. He goes in a room by himself to collect his semen sample, potentially with pornography. She goes in another room to be sedated and have her eggs retrieved. And then they bring egg and sperm together in a lab and put them together in the petri dish, create the embryo and implant that, right? That is not in unison with how God designed procreation to occur. Procreation was designed by God to occur between the sanctity of husband and wife through the marital act, which is a renewal of our marriage vows to our husband or husband and wife, right? And so they're just two polar opposite ends of the spectrum, right? And one of the difficult things, I think, when we're having this conversation about IVF as Christians is so many Christians, you know, there's a lot of Christians that have gone through IVF. And I want to be clear, every baby is a blessing, regardless of how they got here, right? Strong comparison, but a baby that was born of rape is also a blessing. Like, they didn't get here in a way that we would want them to get here, but that child is still a blessing, right? And so IVF, a baby born through IVF is still a blessing. It is still one of God's children and is worthy of love and all of the things, right? That is sometimes argued against us. But there are so many Christians who walk through IVF because to them, my interpretation is that the end justifies the mean. And the end does not justify the mean. And that's really hard when, I see sometimes too, like other influencers who are Christian and speak out against IVF and then end up in their own fertility situations or walking through infertility and then go do IVF. And they're like, well, there's a way that you can do it that's in alignment with Christ. No, there's actually not, because we are not procreating through the marital union. We are separating husband and wife and extracting from both of them and putting this together in a lab, right? And so I just really encourage anybody that's walking through this, like as challenging as it can be and as desperately as we want children. And I was there, I understand, like I have walked your shoes. So I am not speaking out of line. I do not believe. And it's hard to say, like, just trust God's timing. Like no one wants to really just be told that. But reflecting back on my own life, I can see like if I would have gotten what I wanted when I wanted it, I wouldn't be here right now. You wouldn't be listening to me talk about this. I wouldn't have helped hundreds of couples conceive with my team, right? We wouldn't have brought hundreds of babies into the world. We wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. And so for me, looking back on that, I can see so clearly like, oh, if I would have had babies when I wanted them to, I wouldn't have gone to medical school. I wouldn't have moved across the country, left my family and went to medical school with a newborn. I wouldn't have done that. So again, like I wouldn't be here where I am today. So I think while pharma is able to do some of these things, pharma is able to create human life, it doesn't necessarily mean that it should be.
What do you say to Christians who don't see a problem with IVF?
There's a laundry list of ethical and moral issues. So Christians will say like, oh, I found a reproductive endocrinologist who will just fertilize one embryo. Okay, that's fine and dandy, but do you know that if that embryo doesn't grade high enough, they're not going to transfer that embryo because it's going to hurt their success rates? So now you're stuck with an embryo that you have to pay to keep, or you have to donate to science, or you have to discard. And when I say discard, I mean thaw and kill. Like there are some things that just can't be avoided no matter which way you go about it. And so there's moral issues. We're facing eugenics and IVF highly, right? We can pick eye color and hair color and all of these other things. And no, you don't have to do it that way, but it's part of the industry. And there's, if you take the moral aspect aside, there's all of these ethical issues with buying and selling babies and surrogacy, and there's a whole laundry list of things there too. So we're still paying into a system that is largely immoral and unethical.
Why do you choose not to work with couples who are not married?
In the fertility formula, we only work with married couples because, again, we're a Christian-based company, and we believe as Christians that life should only come through the direct union of husband and wife in the sacred marital act. So if we supported couples that weren't married, our perspective is that we would be supporting them in sin. And I wouldn't do that if someone wanted to murder, and I'm not going to do that if someone wants to procreate out of the confines of what we believe is moral.
Okay. And I know you've said your program isn't exclusively for Catholics, but faith is clearly central. So where is that line for who is a good fit and who maybe isn't?
So I'm Catholic. I'm very open about that. And all of my platforms, a lot of the other doctors and experts that work for me are also Catholic. Some of them aren't Catholic, but are of Christians as well. So we are very much a Christian-based organization. We do not exclude from our program. You do not have to be a Christian to work with us. But the majority of our clients are. It's just who we attract into our space. And so we read scripture on some of our calls. We start all of our calls with prayer. It is an integral part of what we're doing outside of just a framework for how we base our recommendations morally and ethically. And so again, anybody is welcome to join our program that is married, right? And is okay entering into a Christian environment. If that's something that you don't want, we're probably not the right program for you. And that's okay. There's lots of other programs out there.
If someone is pursuing IVF at the same time as working with you, is that a problem?
We don't support clients who are pursuing IUI or IVF while they're working with us. And we're very clear about that upfront from the very beginning with all of our clients. That's not what we're here to do. This is not a program to optimize your health and send you off to IVF. There are other programs like that. I have friends that run programs like that. I can send you their information and you can go work with them, right? But that is not what we're doing. So if one of our clients decides they're going to go embark on IUI or IVF, we usually pause our support during that time. If they want to come back to us, we're always willing to to take them back in. This has happened on rare occasion, and conception has occurred. So we'll take, like, they're more than welcome to come back into our pregnancy and beyond program, right? We are not here to exclude based on decisions. Like, we're not we're not here to come at this from a judgy kind of aspect, but it's just not something that we're comfortable supporting couples walking through. And I've actually had very in-depth conversations with this about this with the National Catholic Bioethics Council. So I feel very strong in our standpoint where we are there.
When a woman comes to you exhausted, but she has normal labs, what is the first thing that you would actually check?
The first thing that I'm going to do is look at her labs myself and see, do they actually look normal? Because they probably don't. Because the reference ranges were based on their research that establishes reference ranges is based on middle-aged white men. She's not a male. She's probably not middle-aged. Maybe she's white, right? So those aren't good reference ranges to start. From there, I'm going to look for two things. I'm going to look at cortisol levels. I want to see, how is your cortisol? Are you making enough? Or are your adrenals like, we're done and I am not producing any more cortisol for you? So you feel tired all the time. And the second thing is infections. Do we have infections that are causing us to feel so tired because the body is so busy fighting off those infections? Of course, we're going to look at hormones, vitamin D levels, B vitamin levels. Those are basic things, right? But if all of that truly does look normal, we're diving into cortisol, we're diving into infections.
What is a symptom that most women dismiss as normal that's actually a thyroid problem?
Having cold hands and feet is a symptom that so many women with thyroid issues experience, and they just kind of dismiss it as normal. Like, oh, everybody in my family always has cold hands and feet. But that is an indication that you are operating in a hypothyroid state, a low thyroid state. And we know that when we're in a low thyroid state, it's really hard to conceive because the thyroid is kind of like your energy molecule or the energy regulator. So if you don't have enough energy, your body is saying, not right now. We don't have enough to do this. And your cells aren't healthy enough and your hormones aren't healthy enough. And your thyroid is very closely related to your adrenal gland and your ovaries as well. It's all part of the endocrine system. And I think of those three tied together like a braid: the thyroid, the ovaries, and the adrenals, right? In a braid. So if one of them is pulled a little wonky, then your whole brain's going to be off center.
What is one food that your chronically ill clients are eating that they don't realize is actually making them sicker?
Hands down, sugar. I don't think the general population has a good understanding of how much sugar they're actually consuming in a day. And it's enormous amounts of sugar. Sugar is inflammatory. Sugar feeds infections. Sugar feeds pain. And so if we can just sort of eliminate sugar, right, and processed sugars, artificial sweeteners, even a lot of the uh, sugar substitutes are not great. Outside of honey and maple syrup, I'm not really a fan of a lot of the other sugar substitutes. And so if you are chronically ill, I really encourage you to just track for a day or two and see how many grams of sugar are you actually getting. For a female, you really shouldn't be getting over 20 to 25 grams of sugar in the entire day, and you're probably getting that in one meal.
Wow, 20 to 25. Oh my goodness. What is a hill that you would die on in the health world? Something you believe that most of your colleagues would probably push back on?
Progesterone is key. Progesterone is a luxury hormone. It's kind of what we call it, right? So your body produces progesterone when there's enough left over to make progesterone. If you're stressed, if you're sick, it's going to cortisol. But progesterone is the most common cause for recurrent miscarriages. And I don't know why, but the conventional fertility world, it is like pulling teeth to get them to properly check progesterone 7 days after ovulation and to get them to prescribe progesterone. If they do prescribe progesterone, they're not typically prescribing progesterone suppositories that are compounded at a compounding pharmacy. They're prescribing oral progesterone that's meant to be taken orally and digested by stomach acid and telling clients, oh, you can use it as a vaginal suppository. But it's not going to break down the same way with vaginal secretions as it's going to with stomach acid. Or they're giving IM. So they're giving an injection of progesterone, which has peanut oil and a bunch of other additives that I personally wouldn't want. And so there's this misconception in conventional fertility that, like, I don't know if they think progesterone is bad or what, but progesterone, there's good research to support it in extending luteal phase defect. So if your luteal from the time you ovulate to the time your period starts is too short, we need to extend that. We can use progesterone to do that. Progesterone makes the uterine lining like topsoil. The analogy that I often use is you wouldn't plant a tree in sand. You plant the tree in topsoil, right? So you're not going to have an embryo implant in a weak uterine lining that's like sand from lack of progesterone. We need the progesterone to make the uterine lining like topsoil. And so we need progesterone in early pregnancy. The number one most common cause for recurrent miscarriages is low progesterone. And conventionally speaking, you are required to have 3 early miscarriages before they will prescribe you progesterone. It's nonsense. And I honestly think I could argue that it's murder if they're allowing babies to die because they're not willing to prescribe progesterone, which bioidentical progesterone probably has the highest safety profile of any other pharmaceutical that you could get.
How would a woman know if she needs to supplement with progesterone? And is that something that she could only get through a doctor?
The ways that you determine if you need a supplement for progesterone is first, you're going to do a peak plus 7 progesterone draw. So what that means is 7 days after you ovulate, you need to have your progesterone drawn. You probably didn't ovulate on day 14 unless you're in the 20% of women that do. So conventionally, a provider will check progesterone on day 21 of the cycle. But again, that's not how we do it. It has to be 7 days after you ovulate. You are an individual, not a textbook, right? Then we can look at your luteal phase. How many days from the day you ovulate until the day you start bleeding, any sort of bleeding, spotting even, right? There's not 14 days. Your luteal phase is not long enough. We call that a luteal phase defect. And if you're having a lot of spotting, an indication that you have low progesterone, and you're ovulating late, what happens is these two events crisscross each other. So you might ovulate, sperm and egg might meet, and they're making their way down the fallopian tube to the uterus, and then you start spotting. And once you started spotting, even days before that, your uterine lining is starting to break down and get weak because your period's coming, right? So there's not enough time for that fertilized embryo to make it to the uterus, to the endometrial lining and implant before it starts breaking down for the cycle to start. So if we bring progesterone on board, it enhances the integrity of the uterine lining and allows for more time. So low peak plus 7 progesterone, short luteal phase, spotting before your cycle starts, a lot of moodiness, a lot of the PMS type symptoms can be because there's too much estrogen at that time in your cycle and not enough progesterone.
Who is your program not for? And why is it important for you to be clear about that?
Yeah. Our program, the Fertility Formula, is not for you if you want to go down the road of IUI and IVF. All the power to you, but that's not what we're doing here. If you're not married, I'm sorry, we're not the best program for you. We're not going to be able to support you there. But really, like, who it's not for are people that are unwilling to do the work, that are unwilling to dive in, that are unwilling to change what they believe about health, right? I love working with the crunchy women, but sometimes the crunchy couples come in and they think they know it all already. And I'm like, respectfully, you don't, or else you would be pregnant and you're not. So you need an expert. You need us to walk you through this. You need us to guide you. You've done all this legwork. You've been trying to figure this out on your own for 2 years and you aren't getting there. And I know this is really hard, but we're here to help you now, right? So you got to be willing to change what you believe. You got to be willing to let us dive in and take the lead and walk you on the journey because we know what we're doing or we wouldn't still be here, right? With the success rates that we have. Our program is not for whiners. If you're going to just whine because we're asking you to make changes, we probably don't really actually want to work with you. So you got to be here and you got to be all in and your husband's got to be here and your husband's got to be all in and you guys have to be on the same page and it takes 2 to tango. And we're committed to this process and we're going to do it. And if you do it and you show up and you do the things, our success rate is over 65% in less than a year, which blows the IVF success rates out of the water.
What is something that your clients learn about their health that often shocks them?
So every client that we work with, we're evaluating for food intolerances. And we do this quite different than, of course, the conventional, but even most of the functional naturopathic world. So we use a traditional naturopathic modality to determine food intolerances. And our clinical results are out of this world for an array of different things. But oftentimes, it's not a food that gives people stomach aches. It's not something that makes people say oh, when I eat cheese, I get a stomach ache. Oftentimes it's things that they don't realize until later down the line after they've eliminated this food, right? Oh my goodness, I've lost 30 pounds. My skin is so much clearer. I have so much energy. So of course we're doing these removing and avoiding food intolerances in unison with other things that we're working on. But I would say the conclusion of someone's food intolerance evaluation, the food sometimes really shocks them, but has a drastic impact on their health and their ability to heal and move forward and conceive.
Are there common foods that you see often make a really big difference for people once removed?
So common foods that make a big difference when people remove them is always going to be sugar, always. All those refined sugars, right? But I do find, and I hate to, it sounds so general, but a lot of people are dairy, a lot of people are gluten. I see potatoes sometimes. So whatever the food is for you specifically, right? And it's really important for us to talk about diet with the understanding that the same thing isn't right for everybody, right? And so some people thrive really well being carnivores. Some people don't. Some people can be vegans. I don't like that, but that's neither here nor there. Some people don't, right? Some people can eat very low carb. Some people can't. So we need to dive in and figure out what is the best nutritional plan for you. And this isn't a diet. We're never suggesting like a crash, dietary change for anybody. It's how do we change your lifestyle? How do we teach you and support you in implementing things that are going to have a long-term impact on your health and you're going to be able to take with you and pass on to your children?
Naturopath versus OBGYN. If a woman could only see one for her fertility journey, which one do you think she'd be better off with?
Of course, I'm going to say a naturopathic doctor. That's the obvious, right? But if you want to dive in and really get to the root cause of what's going on and why you're experiencing the symptoms that you are, the only way you're going to get there is working with a naturopath.
Okay. Seed oils versus sugar. If you had to tell a couple trying to conceive to cut one tomorrow, which one wins?
If I had to tell a couple tomorrow to cut one and I could only have them cut one, this is like pulling me in two different directions, but I'd probably pick sugar. Sugar is so inflammatory. It's everywhere you look. People are consuming way more sugar than they should be. You really shouldn't be consuming more than 20 to 25 grams of sugar in a day. We know that sugar is going to have a direct impact on hormones and insulin levels, inflammation, autoimmune conditions, essentially everything going on in the body. It feeds infections, it's feeding parasites, it's feeding bacteria and viruses and all of the things. So if you had to cut one and you could only cut one, for me, it'd be sugar.
Oral birth control versus an IUD. Which one does more damage to long-term fertility?
I would say oral contraception, because most oral contraception is combined estrogen and progesterone synthetic forms. And it's synthetic forms of hormones that are interfering with how your brain communicates with your ovaries, where an IUD is creating a hostile environment in which doesn't in most situations, creating a hostile environment in which egg and sperm can't meet or implantation can't occur. And it's having less of an impact on the hormonal system in the body. But it's also really important to consider that both of these are abortifacient in their own way.
Stress versus diet. Which one is actually sabotaging more women's cycles?
I'm going to go with stress. I think most people today are aware enough to at least know how they should be eating. Stress, I think, is wildly misunderstood, and women don't have a strong enough understanding because we haven't been taught of how stress impacts the cycle. And when we are stressed, your body is living in survival mode. So it's going to start to interfere with your cycle out of protection to not conceive.
Supplements versus food. Where should a woman trying to conceive actually be putting her money?
I'm actually going to say supplements. And I think this might be a little bit of a shocking answer, but the reason is you're already eating. You're already spending money on food. So just spend the same amount of money on the food that you're eating to pick better choices, right? You don't need to spend more money there. But if you're going to spend more money on something, I would spend more money on high quality supplements, but I wouldn't do that willy-nilly. I wouldn't just grab the next hot thing you see the next influencer talking about. You need to make those supplement decisions based on your labs and your nutritional deficiencies and what you specifically need.
Temperature tracking versus ovulation strips. Which one do you think gives women more false confidence?
I hate basal body temperature tracking. It's very finicky. You have to sleep a certain number of hours per night to get a good reading. It has to be the first thing you do in the morning is you roll over and pop that thing in. It's just finicky. Where the ovulation strips, sometimes challenging to read, but we have apps and things to help us with that now, are going to be so much more reliable. So there's nuance here because they're not checking the same thing. An OPK or an ovulation tracker is looking for LH. So it's looking for the signal from your brain to your ovaries, telling them to ovulate. Okay. It doesn't guarantee you ovulated. It's just telling you to ovulate. Basal body temperature or temperature tracking, that happens after ovulation. As your temperature rises, it's rising because progesterone's rising. Progesterone makes us warm. So LH strips tell us ovulation's coming. Basal body temperature, if done correctly, tells us ovulation already happened. So you can't use that to know when to have intercourse to conceive. So I think, regardless, I think basal body temperature, just leave that one aside.
All right. A reproductive endocrinologist versus a naturopath. If a couple has been trying to conceive for 18 months with no success, who should they see first?
Of course, I'm going to argue that you should see the naturopath. But the argument there is, I know what's going to happen when you go to the reproductive endocrinologist. They're going to maybe do an HSG if you haven't had that done yet, but by 18 months, you probably had that done to make sure your fallopian tubes are open. And all they have to offer you at the reproductive endocrinologist office is maybe IUI. You probably could have done that with your OB, but IVF is the only option. There's no digging. There's no root cause evaluation. There's no trying to get to the bottom of why we're not conceiving. But if you come to the other side and you see a naturopath, that's where we're going to dig. That's where you're going to heal. That's where we're going to figure out what's going on. What's on the physical level? What are the infections? What's on the mental, emotional, spiritual level? What are all these different places in your body that we need to work on healing so that your body can move forward and feel safe to conceive and have that baby naturally?
So there was a time when you were the patient, not the doctor. What did that feel like for you?
Mhm. When I was the patient, not the doctor, I was 23 years old. So this was a while ago. Um, and it felt incomplete, isolating. It's hard at any age when you're trying to conceive, but it's really hard when you're in your early 20s and everyone's like, just keep trying. You've got plenty of time. There's nothing to worry about here as you're watching like your life and everyone around you kind of, continue on. So I think that's what really drove me to do this work because no one looked at my hormone levels. I don't know, maybe they did, but if they did, it wasn't at the right time of my cycle because I don't remember ever going to the lab on day 21 of my cycle, right? No one was digging deep to figure out why were we not conceiving at 23 and 26 years old. Like that's pretty strange, right? And so there was just no support. And I think that has really given me the desire to meet my clients where they are and to hear them and to validate what they're experiencing and to dig and give them the answers that they deserve.
What is a client story that still sits with you?
Gosh, I have one client, super lovely. She came to me and she had failed multiple rounds of IUI, I believe, and I know several rounds of IVF. And her OB said, your AMH is so low. There's no way you're never going to conceive without an egg donor. And they actually wanted to remove her thyroid as well because she was in a state of hyperthyroidism. So she came to see us. And I want to be really transparent. Like, these things don't happen overnight, right? We worked on her thyroid for months. We calmed her thyroid down. We got her into a normal thyroid state. So essentially saved her thyroid. Um, and we had been working together maybe 10 to 11 months at this point, and her husband got a little impatient. He was like, well, we still have one more paid round of IVF. Let's go back to IVF. I didn't know they were doing this at the time. So they went back, had a horrible experience, failed another round of IVF. And 2 months later, she conceived naturally and was pregnant through our program after being told multiple times. I think the doctor actually said to her, your eggs suck. Your AMH is too low. This is never going to work. Get an egg donor, all of the things. But she conceived naturally. She just had to do some work, right? It took us a year, but she has 2 babies now.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, can you remember something that a client said to you in a session that you've never forgotten?
Something that a client said to me in the session that I've never forgotten is I feel validated. And I think if you just take a minute and you think about that, most of the people that come to us have been on this journey for years, several, 4, 5, 6, 10. And for someone to say after that long, like, I feel validated. I knew all of this was going on. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't get anybody to order my labs for me. I couldn't get anybody to listen to me. Just really puts into perspective the system that couples are walking through while they're trying to conceive. And being able to give someone the space between myself and my team to feel validated and to say, like, you're not crazy. Like, the way that you feel is not all in your head. Like, something's going on, right? X, Y, and Z. It's just really humbling at the end of the day.
Yeah, what really interests me about this work is that I imagine that probably the easiest people to take advantage of are new parents who don't really know what they're doing and they're just looking for help and they're probably willing to try anything and they just want to do right by their future kids.
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly what we see happening in the world of IVF, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, depending where you look, somewhere between like 20 and $50 billion industry. It is a big business. Again, just like big ag and big pharma and all the other big businesses. And essentially, sadly, like that's exactly what's happening. It's a system of medicine that is preying on couples in the most vulnerable state of their life. And at the end of the day, like that's really what's happening. If we're not giving couples in the conventional fertility world the power and the education that they need um, to make the changes that they need to make to conceive, you're not really trying to help them get pregnant. You don't really actually want to help them heal. And something else is really worth saying is women feel, their words, not mine. I've not ever been on these drugs, but I've heard this so many times. Women feel crazy when they're on these medications because their hormones are just like awry. Okay. It physiologically makes sense that you're going to feel crazy when you're taking these medications. And there's long-term health effects to that. And I think that that is something that's largely not being spoken about is the long-term effects of being on these medications for medicated cycles, Clomid, letrozole, trigger shot, all the things, uh, because we never fixed the root cause of why you needed those medications in the first place. So something's awry. Your liver's not detoxing, you've got infections, whatever it is. And then we fill you up with all of these hormonal medications to force you to ovulate and to force your body to conceive. And then we send you through pregnancy and we expect that to be a healthy baby that doesn't need additional care in the NICU, which we know IVF babies require more NICU care, but we expect that to be a healthy baby. And then we just expect you to go from like this wild infertility journey into new life as motherhood and don't expect that you're going to have postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression, which we know because we have the data that postpartum anxiety and depression is much higher in women that have gone through IVF. But we just destroyed your hormones, gave you a baby, and just like think everything's going to be fine. There's no way. It's just not even logical. The conventional fertility model would collapse tomorrow if women had a true understanding of the long-term effects of these pharmaceuticals that are being used while they're walking through the fertility journey. So a lot of women don't know some of the medications that they're being given to induce ovulation are chemotherapeutics. They're chemo meds that we're giving to cancer patients, right? But even deeper than that is we're not addressing the root cause. We're not addressing why someone needs these medications in the first place. So we're in a state where we're not detoxing well, our hormones aren't being produced properly, the liver's not working, X, Y, and Z, right? We're not in a state of health. And then we add all of these pharmaceuticals that leave women feeling crazy, their words, not mine. And then we force their body to create all of these follicles and extract all the eggs, right? Retrieve the eggs. We create the embryo, we force pregnancy on the body without correcting all of this. We expect there to be a healthy baby when that's an unrealistic expectation when we force the pregnancy on the woman. And we know the research shows us that NICU stays and expenses are higher for babies born through IVF. And then we send mom on her way. Now she has a newborn. And we didn't fix anything. We just added to the mess. And then we send her home with a baby and don't expect her to have postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, which we know based on the research, both of those are higher in women who have been through a fertility journey. So I think if women really understood the long-term consequences of what's happening in their body, that would crash the fertility industry. Now, I do think there's desperation, and I know that, and I can say it because I've walked it. Like there is desperation. You will do anything that you can to have a baby. But what we have to remember is there's long-term effects. There's long-term side effects. And really like our age, our demographic is kind of the experiment for this because IVF really hasn't been around that long. And it hasn't been done at the capacity that's being done now for even a decade. So we are the experiment. Children born of IVF are the experiment. The women walking through this journey and taking all of these pharmaceuticals are the experiment. We do not have long-term safety studies. or long-term health studies in general. So I think if women really had a better understanding of the whole picture and didn't feel so pigeonholed, right? They go in and the story's all the same. They go in and they're like, there's nothing else we can do but IVF. And you only know what you know, and you make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. And if someone is telling you that as a doctor that you respect and are coming to it for advice, that's believable, right? But it's not the truth.
What is something you used to believe about health or fertility that you have completely changed your mind on, and what made you change it?
Mhm. Something that I've changed my mind about when it comes to health and fertility that I used to feel very strongly about is that everyone should eat the same Whole30 paleo type of diet, right? When I was walking through my fertility journey, I was doing CrossFit 5 days a week. I was eating a very strict paleo diet. Um, in hindsight, I can see how neither of those things were working in my best favor. But even going into practice of medicine, both of those diets are very whole foods based, which is, we think of that as healthy, but it's nuanced. Nutrition is nuanced and it's not the same for everybody. Um, just because I can't digest dairy doesn't mean that you can't digest dairy. Just because I can't digest gluten doesn't mean that you can't digest gluten, right? Carnivore is really good for some people. Carnivore is not good for other people. And so we have to be more nuanced when we're making dietary recommendations. And it's going to be different for everyone. And we can't use a blanket statement. And we really have to look and see, okay, what did your ancestors eat? I'm from Eastern Europe. If you're from Asia, they probably didn't eat the same things. So our bodies didn't evolve to eat the same things. And it's the quality of your food that matters, right? So do I think everyone should be eating from the outside aisles of the grocery store, right? That is fruit, veggies, meat, good quality grains, or healthy fats. Like, yes, but we have to structure that differently for you based on your body's needs.
And what did your body feel like before you cut out gluten? And what does it feel like now?
So I've been gluten free for probably close to 20 years now at this point. When I was consuming gluten, I was grumpy. I always say gluten makes me grumpy. It does. I had a lot of GI issues. I had a lot of acne. I had a lot of joint pain. Growing up, I had a lot of autoimmune chronic illnesses like through my teenage years. And I was in so much bone pain all of the time. I couldn't function. Like in high school, I would come home and I would just lay on the bathroom floor. I took like 3 baths a day because the heat helped so much, because I was in so much bone pain. So eliminating gluten from my diet completely eliminated all of the bone pain that I had. It made me a much more pleasant person. And my family will agree with that, right? And so does that mean that everybody should cut out gluten? Like, no, it doesn't, because it's not necessarily the gluten that's bad. It's what the gluten is in that's potentially bad, right? So for me, it is the gluten, and I cannot tolerate gluten. And if you have Hashimoto's, I don't recommend eating gluten, and we could have a whole side conversation about that. But this is again where it's nuanced, and we have to figure out what are your individual food intolerances. How does your body digest foods, and are you eating real food? Like, are you eating processed gluten? No, no one should eat that, right? No one should eat the boxed cake. But if you're eating a sourdough that you baked in your own kitchen and it doesn't bother you, that's amazing. I'm jelly. Like you eat that sourdough and think of me while you're enjoying it, right? And the same thing goes for dairy. Are we eating highly processed crap, or are we eating like raw dairy from the cow from yesterday? There's a difference in the quality of the food there.
Okay. And then one more question that I wanted to ask you is you've talked a little bit about the relationship between gut health and fertility. If,
Mhm.
let's say, a woman had a history of having an eating disorder, how could that potentially impact her when she's trying to conceive?
If a woman has historically suffered from an eating disorder, that can still have an impact on fertility today. And there's lots of different eating disorders, but the one that I honestly see most commonly is orthorexia. And orthorexia is not that we're not eating and not eating enough, it's that we're so obsessed over the health and the quality of our food that we get stuck. And if it is not in the purest, most organic whole form, we just can't eat it. Right? This is what we call orthorexia. And what happens when we are orthorexia and that's restricting our food, or anorexic, um, bulimic, whatever the thing is you have to have enough nutrients for your body to make hormones and to communicate. So something that we still see commonly, because across the board, women just don't eat enough food or enough calories or enough protein. They think they do, but really when you start tracking, it's for most women, not even enough to sustain their basal metabolic rate, like what you need to just lay in bed all day and not die, right? And so this can be a cause for anovulation. This is one of the most common causes that women are not ovulating, is that they're not eating enough or they're over exercising and they're asking their body to do more than it can do with the amount of nutrition that you're giving it. And that was very much my situation when I was trying to conceive and I was doing CrossFit 4 to 5 days a week and eating strict paleo. I literally had no body fat, and your body fat helps to make your hormones. And so if you're not eating enough, your body is in a state of survival. And this is your nervous system telling your body that it is not safe to conceive right now, so we're not going to do this. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So even, your alarm clock or the light from a smoke detector, that can be too bright. If you can see your hand, too bright. Oh, hang on. I got to think about what I had in my mind for this. I might have to come back to this one. Other things. I feel like I need to end it, but I just kind of stopped. The fertility industry would collapse tomorrow if women knew the light. Oh gosh. That's a good question. I just want it to be a really good answer. Let's come back. Let's go back to it.